1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Tuesday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast live. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast, the first live show of the week following on from Monday's Goodison Park Memories special podcast. We are here today to discuss and react to Sunday's events. The final men's first team game at Goodison Park, an historic 2-0 win for the Blues. I am your host today, and joining me in the Royal Blue Podcast studio to talk all things Everton, we have Chris Beesley. Chris, how are things? All good?
Yeah, I've been actually very busy. The longest day, I think it was on Sunday, was parked up before 8:30 in the morning, and it only just got my usual space, and it was a lot sort of longer before kick-off than I would normally turn up, and I could see all the fans making their way to Goodison even then, and by the time I reached the ground a few minutes later, you could just see it was going to be an incredible day, going to be a very special day, a very different day, I think I said at the time. You know, the 3.5 hours before kick-off, and there's like thousands of people around Goodison. These are the sort of scenes you don't tend to see in Britain. It's something like from Turkey or South America, but yeah, you could see from a very early time that it was going to be something special, something very different.
Absolutely. Also joining us today's show, hopefully going to keep his emotions in check. No tears or crying. We've got Connor O'Neill. How are things?
Yeah, very good. Just to confirm, I wasn't crying on Sunday. If people think that is a reference to crying,
I had a tear in my eye, like.
It was a little bit emotional. I had to get a little bit choked at times, but I was more enjoying the sing-along, to be honest with you. I mean, I like a sing-along at the best of times, so
we know.
You know, exactly. So I don't need any invitation.
Karaoke specialist is Connor O'Neill.
I don't need any invitation.
Probably having to hold himself back in the press box, to be fair.
I don't have to need any invitation to enjoy a good sing-along with some classics, and we got to do certainly some classics played on the PA before and afterwards, wasn't it, on Sunday? But no, very well, Ian.
Okay, well, as always, give this video a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. As always, we are live, so get your comments in, get your questions in, take part in the podcast yourself, and I'll try and read out as many as possible. I mean, Chris, we'll talk about the game a little bit, even though Connor said he doesn't want to talk about the game, but we'll come on to that in a little bit. But genuinely, I wasn't entirely sure how emotional it was actually going to be. Mm-hmm. But, you know, seeing people around the ground, you know, tears in their eyes. I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. Myself, you know, before the game, I think I was more emotional before the game when they were, when they played There She Goes and the Elton John song. Obviously, that's why they call it the blues. Yeah. That's when I started to well up a little bit. But genuinely, you know, there was grown women, you know, just in tears, certainly in the aftermath of it all, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting how you say the different sort of moments that sort of hit different people. We'll come on to the cover of the Echo in a minute. I'll get Connor to hold that up, but I'll mention that in a sec. But yeah, I was probably too busy to get. I don't tend to, you know, there's lots of things in my life that make me emotional. I'm not tend to be the one. I've never cried over football, good or bad. But if you're going to say the one point that maybe did hit me in any way was probably watching it back afterwards. Would actually be, I was mentioning this to Connor earlier, is the parade of the former players actually. Because you see that obviously various ages. I mean, some of them about my age, but some are even younger. But some of the more veteran players there, and you could see them sort of hobbling and shuffling onto the Goodison pitch. You know, these grand old warriors, these men who put their bodies on the line for Everton Football Club over many years, and you can see it's taking a toll on some of them now. Yeah. So to see them sort of making their way out on the pitch, that would probably be the moment for me in terms of, but yeah, like I said, everyone's got their different sort of elements in the day, and it's interesting you mention the There She Goes. I mean, great old Scouse anthem from the Lars back in the day, and a lot of people have said get that on the playlist now for the new stadium. It sort of really struck a note. Really, you pardon the pun, certainly in terms of a resonance with Evertonians, obviously with Goodison being called the grand old lady, and there she goes. But I think bringing that forward, that could be one to add to the playlist for the new stadium. But if I'll just get Connor to do is James Richardson now and hold this up as it was Corriella de la Sera or something. We'd love to find out who this Evertonian is, this solitary fan there in the stands, taking it all in on Sunday. Well done, Connor. I didn't want to reach over.
That's the reason why I'm on the podcast.
Yeah, he's earned his fee there.
I guess, sorry, for those listening rather than watching, Connor's just held up an edition of today's... Is it today's? Yesterday's Liverpool Echo, and it's a solitary lady sat at Goodison. Obviously not wanting to leave Goodison Park, and the picture is quite poignant, really, isn't it? Yeah, so
she encapsulates thousands of Evertonians there, so surely somebody's got to know who she is. So we'd love to get in touch if possible, and for her to share her story of Goodison on the day. But yeah, like I said, it could have been one of thousands of different fans there who's feeling the emotion of the day. And I felt that in that respect, we'll go on to this, but it sort of was Everton at its best in many elements. But for young and old people who've been going for a few years or many years, this was an incredible shared experience.
Absolutely. I mean, Connor, we should always be proud to be Everton fans and Blues, but I think everyone, the club, fans, anyone associated with the club and, in the events on Sunday couldn't be more prouder.
Yeah, it was a special day, wasn't it? I actually felt a bit emotional before in the build up to it, because you start thinking about, you see, obviously there was a lot written, by ourselves and obviously by the national media and the documentary by Sky, and people are recalling their own memories, and their own favourite memories, and that gets your own mind triggering. I wrote a piece kind of on my own reflection about, with Goodison and like my dad growing up and stuff like that. Yeah. And, it does make you think, and Sunday come around, and I was up quite early on Sunday, maybe with the excitement and the, anticipation of what's going to come. And I don't live too far from Goodison, and I was just sat at home watching the news about 7:15, and 3 lads walked past my window, one in his Everton shirt and 2 others, clearly going up to Goodison. And I was sat there thinking, God, they're early, it's 7:15 in the morning. I then went to the shop about half an hour later at the top of, just on County Road, placing the Black Horse, to buy Sunday's Echo, because obviously the mastheads had gone blue on Sunday as well. And there was 3 lads in there with a cooler bag and putting cans and bottles that they just bought in to take up to Goodison. And I thought...
Experienced, obviously.
Experience, fair play, getting there early. So I come back, put the paper away, and I thought, I'm going to walk up myself, soak it all up for one last time, because for me, I'm quite privileged, and I can walk to Goodison and walk home. I probably won't be walking to Bramley Moor Dock and walking home from there. So, for one last time, to take the famous route, and the route I take is I come over the hill and I look onto Goodison Road and the statue, and come onto it that way. And I got just past Crofts, and there was people there, and I was getting close, and I just couldn't believe when I got onto Goodison Road.
Did you expect that many people?
No.
You're taken aback a little bit?
I was at 8:15 in the morning. Yeah. I was genuinely blown away, because I thought the people of Walton like to sleep in, or whatever, everyone liked to sleep in on a Sunday, but there was probably thousands, if I'm being honest, all along Goodison Road. People were queuing to get in the Winslow. There was, people with cans, on the street that they bought. There was people already on the Gladys Street end, taking it all in for one last time. And I had a little walk around and come back up, and then went to the press room, and I come back out about 9:30. And by that point, Goodison was just a sea. Goodison Road was just a sea of blue smoke. Thousands had congregated outside, and it was truly special. The atmosphere was incredible. People going through the songs. It was just so joyful, and it was just it was just great to be a part of it and just be there and experience it and take it all in. And obviously then, before the game, I think that was when it really, really hit me, was before the game, when, they played the Lars, and then Z Cars come on, and, that roar when, Z Cars hitting the two teams emerged. I don't think I've ever heard a roar like it. I probably won't ever hear a roar like that again. And I looked around actually in the main stand, and there was, people of all ages with tears in their eyes, and some people who, I saw with tears in my eyes are people who I've been seeing the last 3 years who sit by the press box every week, and that was when it kind of hit home of, you know, this is going to be this is an emotional moment, and you know, you just, if you're being honest, you're just proud and privileged to be there because it was history and it's something that we'll all talk about and remember for years to come.
Absolutely. Like the start of the game before it, everything that went with that, you know, the 2 songs, that was kind of when it hit me. I mean, was there any standout moments for you, Chris? I know we always try to analyse things, and we are analysing this, I guess. I think for me, afterwards, the post-match celebrations, the violinist with Zed Cars, you know, that was special. I think I got a little bit choked up with it. Obviously, the toffee lady walking along the pitch closer to the Gladys Street end. I thought that was fantastic. Obviously, we had the player interviews and stuff like that, and then, you know, the final conclusion of it with Spirit of the Blues and obviously the Beatles song as well. But anything where you thought you're really getting choked up here that stood out?
The thing that choked up as such, but I found what was really special was I mean, we had a little bit of a laugh with this with Joe on Friday about how he was saying just who's got copyright for it's no longer it's a party no longer awake, because a lot of people have said that now. But that, the fact that it was bouncing and like you say, the Spirit of the Blues beforehand, some great photographs from the day. And those aerial ones of obviously the ones that stand out with the plumes of blue smoke. Connor and I were, as he's already pointed out, were in the thick of that. I hope everyone's all right, because it got quite thick, that smoke. We weren't even right by it. I was like fearing you might, have a few.
There was videos, wasn't there, where the coach was going past, supposedly. You couldn't even see the coach. It was that thick of blue smoke.
Yeah, I don't know what it was like. It was quite, I mean, I just hope we haven't shaved a few years off our life there. I mean, especially those ones who were...
It was all worth it if we did. It was all worth it if we did.
But yeah, I'm joking about... Yeah, it was just those scenes. So online today on X, people being asked to share their favourite photos from the day. And obviously, the standout ones are those ones, the aerial shots I mentioned. But I just wanted to share one from inside the ground that we got on our system. So if you take a look at that on an X. And all it is the corner of the Gladys Street and the Bullens Road. And it's just the sea of faces and the fans there. It's not like, obviously, with the 1878s in recent weeks, we've had all the banners and the flags and stuff like that. It's not too much of that. But it's just the people there. And I think, like, it's a genuine fan base, a special fan base and a unique fan base. It's just a real home of football, and to see those real football supporters in there. So if you guys take a look at that image on X, it's not like an incredible piece of art. It's just lots of people, but it just looks like a proper football ground, proper football crowd at a proper football ground, and that's what I liked about it. The fact that it was with Goodison staying on now, with it being spared the bulldozers, it didn't have that mournful sense. So, like you said, there were the more serious, the more poignant moments, like the violinist and stuff like that. And I'd also say, actually, that the toffee lady is one of the things we've got to remember. We're talking about Everton's uniqueness, about Everton being special, because we've all grown up with it. I think nobody other club has got that. Nobody else has got an equivalent of a toffee lady who goes around and throws the sweets, the Everton mints into the ground, and along with St Luke's Church being the only church by a ground. So you've got all the different things, like Goodison being the first purpose-built football ground, venue for the most top-flight matches, first ground to have double-decker on each side. No, it doesn't now with the park end, but it's the first to have the double-decker, first to have undersaw heating. So many firsts for Everton, all things that make Goodison Park unique, and we should celebrate that. We shouldn't sort of take those things for granted.
I mean, Connor, we've done the coach arrivals a number of times in the past. This kind of blew everything else that had gone previously out the water, didn't it? Thousands of people on the street. You were in the melee of it. You were right outside on Goodison Road. It obviously had to take an alternative route because there was just...
I mean, thank God it did, because I think we're probably still waiting for kick-off now, to be honest, if it didn't, because I didn't realise... I mean, I'll be honest, because where I was by the Winslow. So obviously, right in the thick of it on Goodison Road. But you couldn't move either, so you couldn't really see. And like, obviously there was blue smoke in the air and stuff. I didn't quite realise how many people were at the far end, where the park end is, and where the hot walk is, and the
aerial shots give
I didn't realise how many people were congregated around there. So you can see now why they had to make this decision to get the bus an alternative route, because there's just no way that all them people would have been able to move onto the curb.
Could have been
safely.
dangerous, couldn't it?
Yeah, and you could already see how busy it was the far end where the main entrance is, where the buses normally stop. So you completely understand why the club had to make the decision to take an alternative route. And I don't think anyone really cared, did they? Because by that point, everyone was having the time of their lives and was saving it for one last time. But yeah, I think the two big things for me around like the coach welcome and stuff was, one, and this is testament to the players, probably more testament to David Moyes, if we're being brutally honest. You could just enjoy it. You could just turn up, enjoy it. Okay, we all wanted to win the game, and you know, I spoke to Dwight McNeil in the tunnel afterwards, in the very brief spell that we had in the tunnel, because it was obviously a lot was going on. But he, you know, said, you know, Seamus Coleman, for instance, had told the players the night before, you know, this is how important this game is. David Moyes had been, he said, honest with the players and said, look, you know, we've got to win this one, lads. You know, you can't get beat. And I think that was what makes it so special, was that, you know, when we've seen them coach welcomes before, they've always been for a purpose to keep Everton in the Premier League. And they've always been, you know, around kind of, we've got to get the team over the line, you know, we've got to. And I think, you know, you go and, you know, you've experienced the kind of atmosphere, but then you get in the ground. And understandably, you'd be probably hit by that nervousness of like, oh, we've done our bit, but is it going to be enough? And obviously, you know, we saw at certain times it wasn't enough. You know, the Newcastle game, when it was a great reception for the team that night. You know, it was a night game, and Goodison was rocking, and they got beat 4-1 quite comfortably. So there wasn't that element to it, which I think was the best thing. It was just an afternoon where you could rock up at Goodison, take it all in for one last time. There was nothing, obviously you want to win, but there was nothing major on the line. You could just have a good afternoon and enjoy yourselves. And I think that's the most important thing. And the other important thing was we scored inside the first 10 minutes, because I think you want to get off to a good start, don't you? And I think, you know, the little man, the magician, as we've called him on this podcast throughout this season, delivered when it mattered most, didn't it? 'Cause it was a great finish. And I think that then put everyone at ease, didn't it? Because it was like, right, we're 1-0 up now. We've got something to hold on. We've scored. You know, we can all kind of start enjoying ourselves, and I think that's what the crowd did.
What point did you realise the bus wasn't coming down Goodison Road?
It was about 10:25 when I started to think, team news is out very shortly, and the bus has got to be somewhere, surely. You know, like apparently there was an announcement made, but I couldn't.
Connor and I were stood next to each other.
I didn't hear anything. Yes. But it was so. I mean, Chris can testify. It was so loud where we were on Goodison Road. People singing, people with the flares. You know, it was great. But yeah, it was about 10:25 when I thought, don't quite think the bus is going to come this way.
I hope your suits weren't covered in all the blues.
That was all right. I did hear the announcement, and there was some boos. It didn't turn ugly, but you know, obviously people were disappointed. But from a realistic point of view, because we couldn't even. I'd sort of had aspirations of heading up by the hot walk and that myself, but. Like you, I barely got like a couple of yards from the press room. Yeah, we couldn't. It was absolutely chocker.
I mean, the aerial shots that you can see, it's fantastic scenes, but you could just see there was no way that bus was getting.
It's the right call, wasn't it? And you know, the players got in. That meant that everyone then could go into their own seats and, you know, savour. People, you know, weren't hanging around, and you know, look, it was the right call. You know, 100%. Like I said, I didn't realise till I got home just how many people were at the far end as well. You know, it was unbelievable.
Well, we'll come on to the match. I think we should talk about the match, because let's face it, it was a win. An Everton player got Goodison's final goal. But Chris, I just want to ask you, I felt like after the game, this was like amongst my group of mates, like there was a sentiment or a thought, like imagine if Everton were actually good. Imagine if they were fighting for trophies. Imagine if they were fighting at the top end of the table. And we always question, or other fans question as well, how big Everton actually are. We know we're a big club because we're in our Everton bubble. That's what we always say. Is there any doubt in your mind now after Sunday? We would expect how Sunday panned out and the amount of fans that we've got, and you know the scenes were just incredible. But is there any doubt in your mind, like allayed now, that you know Everton are just a huge club?
It's what I've done a piece today, a talking point, and it's all about that, to be fair. So check that out, please. It's on the Echo website. And I'm just saying, as we've always known, and as David Moyes knew from day one in the job back in 2002, I'm talking about when he came in the first time around, and gave his People's Club remark that the fan base has always been Everton's biggest asset, and that goes down, you know, right to the start, you know. When Everton get in the Football League ahead of their original local rivals, Brutal Bootle, as they were known, who actually had a better playing record than them at the time. It was Everton's pulling power out through the turnstiles that got them in, before any of the so-called Big Six were involved in the Football League. Everton got them from the start. They had the highest average attendances for the first decade of Football League, and that's carried on through generations now. But you're going to have the point now where, I know obviously Goodison's record attendance 78,000, and they would regularly get crowds of over 70,000 in the post-war era. That as an average over a season, Everton have only topped 50,000 once. That was the 62-63 title winning season. So Everton are now going to be playing, presumably they sell out every week at Hill Dickinson Stadium, as we must call it now. They'll be playing in front of their biggest average crowds in their biggest regular crowds in their history. And like you said, they'll be success-starved. This, 30 years, this is by far the longest barren streak they've gone in terms of not winning silverware. Yet, there's more Evertonians than ever before. We were told in the last 12 months that there was 30,000 on the season ticket waiting list. They're having to share their city with a global football superpower. A team who's won the lot for decades now and has been dominant for decades. And these young generations of Evertonians, it's actually 30 years today, actually, is the anniversary of them winning the FA Cup against Manchester United. I don't remember that. You can remember that. You're very young. Before Connor's time, and a whole generation of Evertonians have been brought up, on a starvation diet of relegation battles and just keeping their heads above water. Just imagine, like you say, if they were actually able to achieve something. And like I've said in my piece, Madrid, Milan, dare I say even Manchester have shown us there's room to have two footballing giants in one city, and it's all there now for Everton to take off. I'm not going to say that Everton are going to have some golden age and are going to take on all comers now, but everything is there going to be set up for them at the new stadium, and that's kind of right. As much as everyone had a tear in their eye and there was all that sentiment about leaving Goodison, it's long overdue. Goodison Park, for most of her existence, has been the best club ground in the country, but unfortunately for a generation now at least, that's not been the case. We're hearing about the bottom three in the Premier League for generating matchday revenue. Time's ripe now to move to that new stadium and hopefully sort of giving these loyal but long-suffering fans that success they desperately deserve.
You do think, though, just on that, because I've actually had this conversation with a couple of people before, and I won't go into too much detail, but we have actually spoke about, what type of bend do you go on if Everton ever won a trophy? And that probably lowers the tone from what the serious points Chris has just, and the right points that Chris has just made there.
I've got to cut it just after you finish, Chris.
But I do think that'll resonate with some of our viewers and listeners, because everyone must have the same thoughts.
Of course.
You go to match with your mates, that trophy, the day they win the trophy.
I'm getting quite old now, so I think 2 days would probably be enough for me after that.
But what are 2 days it'd be, though, for you?
I'd be struggling on the second
But no,
day.
it is, isn't it? And that is the burning question. And I actually thought that myself when I was walking home on Sunday night, is just imagine if Everton ever won something. Just imagine if Everton ever won a piece of silverware. And Chris says, I wasn't born when Everton won the FA Cup in 1995. So from my age downwards, there's generations of supporters who've never seen Everton win a trophy, and it would be incredible.
Well, just while we're on that and you're touching on it, I don't want to turn this into a trophy-less winning or winless podcast.
Just about benders.
Yeah, but Terry Dactyl has basically said Wigan, Leicester, and now Palace have won the FA Cup. We tend to use the excuse of we can't compete with the big six. I don't know, is that a fair comment? Obviously, 30 years.
Well, it gives you hope, doesn't it? I mean, I watched the FA Cup. I was in the office on Saturday night, but I did have the FA Cup final on. It's got to give you hope, hasn't it? It's got to give you belief. The League Cup is one that always mind boggles me when I've seen Everton managers in the past play weakened teams in the competition, and they've exited in the way they have. And I don't mean without going too far back, but me and Chris both had some far right views on when Frank Lampard made a whole 11 changes at Bournemouth, which
that was the beginning of the end for him there.
Well, it wasn't. And to be honest with you, I lost a little bit of respect from that night, because I just thought, what are you doing? But he's not the only one who's done that. I think it's way of pointing out, or in the FA Cup. So yeah, it definitely gives you hope, and there's no, that's where I think the pressure does come on David Moyes next season. Obviously, he's got to have a squad that competes in the Premier League, but I think people will be expecting two good cup runs, FA Cup and League Cup. Let's take them seriously, and let's, because watching like South Palace, does show that if you could take it serious, you never know what's going to happen.
No, I'll just counter that a little bit. I don't disagree with it entirely, but the three teams mentioned who obviously have won the cup, they've all been relegated at some point and they've spent time out of it. So it is difficult, isn't it, to win trophies.
And I would say as well, when Leicester won the FA Cup, they were a very good team. They played in the Champions League not long before that. They'd obviously won the Premier League a couple of years before that. So yeah, I think that should also be counted into consideration. But one moment for me as well, I thought was quite poignant on Sunday was David Moyes' interview on the pitch when he said, this is a family, but it's felt like a football club that's broken, but it's not broken anymore. And I thought that was quite poignant because it actually does feel that way now. It does feel like there's a bit of unity and a bit of togetherness, and everyone's kind of come together. And like I say, he deserves massive credit for this because him returning as manager was an absolute masterstroke, wasn't it? When you look at it, and I know it's easy to say, but you don't quite think Sean Dyche would have spoke with the elegance and the bit of passion that David Moyes did on the pitch on Sunday after the game.
Spoke.
But it just felt like like that comment stuck, resonated with me because it did feel like this season it felt broken, didn't it? I remember after the Forest game when we lost 2-0, going to the pub for a couple of pints, and there was this disagreement in terms of is Dyche taking the team as far as he can? Has he not? Some people saying you got to stick with him. Now on Saturday everyone's united, everyone's together. I think most 99% of people believe David Moyes is the right man to be in charge of the football club. He knows what's expected of him. So I thought that was quite poignant as well. And I think Moyes has said a lot of the right things at a lot of the right times this season. But I thought that was the perfect message to deliver. That this has been good, but there's still a lot more we can do.
I feel like I'm arguing with myself here, but I think those three teams who've been mentioned who've won trophies, again, I mentioned, they've spent time out of the division. However, like you've just mentioned there, Chris, Sunday proves how big Everton are. Like, we're without that one of the 5 top biggest clubs in the league. I don't care what anyone says. I know that might not have been the case over the years, but I just think Sunday proves that, and we have obviously got to get back to, where we all think we belong. Chris, let's we'll touch upon the game. Let's face it, it's historical. It'll go down as Goodison's last ever game for the men's first team, and we won it 2-0. I think maybe it's a little bit of disappointment that we couldn't have got the 3rd, 4th, or maybe 5th, but I don't think it was through the want to trying. But it'll obviously always go back to whether we've got enough quality on the pitch to get those goals over the line. But I guess the most positive thing, and I know we went off injured, the most positive thing was that the club captain, Seamus Coleman, led the team out, so that was a special moment for him.
Yeah, obviously, as viewers and listeners will know, we're hugely privileged just days beforehand to go down to Goodison Park ourselves. Ian filmed it and I spoke to him to do the final episode of Goodison Park, My Home, with Seamus. And that's available now, the final episode of the series. So it was only right, wasn't he? He's played more games in the Premier League than any other Everton player, and just been such a leader on and off the pitch for so long now. So that was great that he was able to at least lead them out and do his job in that he won the toss. So they attacked the Gladys Street in the second half. So as I said, it was unfortunate. Didn't actually get an Everton goal in front of the Gladys Street. So he did his job in that respect. And as David Moyes has said, he is going to be staying on next season. I just don't know how many games he'll be available for, but he's obviously invaluable in the camp. It was a strange one in terms of the football was secondary. It was more about the experience for the fans, and so it wasn't about the football. But then they had to win, so as we said, getting the early goal and sort of being a bit of a routine victory in the end, going to a canter. It was a shame. I mean, I went for 4-0 in my predictions, and maybe it could have been another day. I mean, obviously better with the 2 offside ones. But yeah, it was how it should have been. If you could have handpicked an opponent, to be fair, I know some people saying wouldn't it be typical Everton to lose to them? But if you had had to have pick an opponent, Southampton would be the ones for you. And whereas they play a lot of sort of easy on the eye football, not so penetrative in the final third. So yeah, to get the early goal and to win a canter, it was a very professional performance because you can't have been easy. I know it's the sort of pressure you want rather than a relegation pressure or you must win. But they they would have been in a hiding to nothing if they hadn't beaten Southampton. So yeah, they did that in pretty comfortable style, I thought.
I mean, Connor, you mentioned the person who scored those 2 goals, Goodison's last ever goal, Iliman and Dye. You called him a magician earlier. I did find it quite interesting. I was talking with Chris before we came in, that in the second half, we broke a couple of times, didn't we? I think it was at least 2 or 3 times. And there must have been about at least 5 or 6 players bombing on forward. So quite clearly, they had in the back of their minds, someone on that pitch wanted to get that goal, which incidentally left us a little bit open towards the end. And you did think, Southampton going to get in here? Are they going to score?
Well, Pickford makes a great save, doesn't he?
Well, that's what I mean. But obviously, Iliman and Dye, fitting that he gets the goal. And it was goals typical of him, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think me and Chris jinxed the second half because we both spoke quite confidently. And I think it's safe to say we both made up when Everton were going to kick Gladys Street in the second half. We both talked about it as the game kicked off. Like, oh, they're going to go to Gladys Street second half. That's it. That's good omen. And yeah, it didn't quite work out that way. So maybe me and Chris jinxed that. But no, it was fitting. I think that Iliman and I got the goals because, in Goodison's final season, there's been a lot of tough moments, hasn't he? It just hasn't been great at times, we're being honest. But he's always been the one man who's got you on the edge of your seat, isn't he? He's the one man who's got that bit of spark, that little bit of something special. And, I think, we spoke about it at length, haven't we, in this season. He could go down, I think, as Kevin Fellowes' best signing, if we're being honest, if he plays, at the level he does. And like I say, he has been the true entertainer, I think, of Goodison's final season from an Everton point of view. So it was fitting that he got both goals. And like you say, the first one's a bit of individual brilliance, isn't it? I know the defending's not great, but he cuts inside and he finishes well. And the second one, he finishes a fine team move where the sort of composure that we don't often see from an Everton player in the final in the box. So it was fitting that he got both goals, and I'm sure he got the match ball as well. Even though he didn't get a hat trick, he asked the referee for the match ball because
a couple of fans in the Low Gladys got the match ball as well that I saw.
Oh, did they? Yeah.
Okay. The multi-ball, we all get one.
That'll be one in a couple of years. That one, everyone will be contesting who's actually got what. But no, yeah, it was great, and I think the important thing was just to win because I doing a little bit of research on, doing a little reading on Saturday night. I discovered that Main Road's last game, Man City's last game at Main Road, saw them entertain Southampton, and Southampton won 1-0 and proved to be the party poopers. So thankfully there was no history repeat all them years on.
That's typical old Man City in it to lose the last game.
Yeah, but it also would have been very Everton, wouldn't it, as well?
Bottle jobs, aren't they, City?
Very Everton as well. But no, it was good to cap it off for a win, and I think it was just good to see Everton be able to celebrate a goal, wasn't it? Goodison. I think that was the big thing because you wanted that last moment of seeing a couple of goals.
I mean, Chris, the Premier League table, I guess it's not irrelevant as such, but it was nice that we were going to finish above United, Tottenham, West Ham. That's all confirmed now.
Yeah.
I don't think we can finish any lower than 14th. Obviously, Wolves have got 2 games to go, so they could effectively win the next 2 and we'll get beat. But ironically, with taking away the points deduction from last season, we would have finished 12th last season. Is that right?
Yeah.
And now we can't really finish any higher than 13th. Well, we're going to hopefully finish 13th, and that's where it's going to be. Is that pretty much where you expected Everton to finish this season?
Well, it was at the start of the season, but come obviously halfway through and Deitch gets sacked and Moyes comes in, they're only on 17 points after 19 games, which was less than half the total they finished off when they only just stayed up in 2023, which was the lowest equivalent points total in their history. So actually done really well. Like I say, they're looking good, hopefully, to finish top of that mini league now of the teams who have avoided relegation. It's absolutely incredible, and it's pretty damning on those 2 Europa League finalists, albeit one of them's going to go through the back door and qualify for the Champions League. But to finish above 2 of the, like I said, the so-called Big Six, Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur, it's absolutely incredible for all the wrong reasons. I think the fact that United still on less than 40 points now, I mean, whatever, it's a lot. It's by far and away their lowest Premier League total, and Tottenham just above the drop zone as well. So to finish above those 2, see West Ham, Potter was mooted for Everton before Moyes came back in, and obviously to finish above them as well. And then, like I said, I think it's the case if Wolves don't win at Palace tonight, then it's pretty much that Everton will
We've got a
finish
better goal
13th,
difference.
yeah, for about 10, I think, or something like that. So as long as Wolves don't win at Palace tonight, I mean, 13th would be wrapped up. So finishing top of that mini league, as it were. So I think, given where David Moyes was when he came in, he couldn't have asked any more, really. I know, as we've said already, at Goodison Park itself, the record has been very poor, really. It's a joint lowest, just the 5 wins in the league all season at home. But Moyes has won 4 away from home in the Premier League, and hopefully, and tellingly, he's won by the banks of the Trent against Nottingham Forest, and he's won by the banks of the Thames against Fulham. So it's all gearing up there to be by the banks of the Mersey. More home comforts for Everton next season, with more Evertonians watching them on a regular basis than ever before.
I think that's what you got to judge on, haven't you? Like, you've got to judge it on where Moyes was when he came in, and I think, you know, if we're being honest, you're biting people's hands off for 13th, leaving Goodison after Aston Villa game and his first one in charge. Yeah. I know I certainly would have.
Lost, yeah.
Because I remember I remember walking out actually with a member of the national media pack, and the two of us were saying, like, my God, he's got some job on his hands here, because, you know, there wasn't, obviously I know he'd only had 2 training sessions and stuff, but there didn't seem that lifted, and a lot of the old problems were still, you know, clear to see, and you did panic a little bit that night, I think, because you did think this could be one there where we're in for the long haul, but to be safe going into April, and then, like I say, to be able to enjoy Sunday for what it was, the event, and not to finish 13th, I think is a great achievement for David Moyes and his staff to achieve from where we were when he first come in.
Yeah, I think just how quickly it's turned around from that Bournemouth game away from home as well. It's just insane. I was literally just trying to scour the comments for any that I could read out. I'm going to continue to do that, but I just want to mention or bring up an appearance from Premier League CEO Richard Masters at Goodison Park. What did you make of that, Chris? I don't know whether he was ill-advised or what. He got his arrival plans all wrong. I mean, I guess most people probably did when he arrived at Goodison with the amount of people that were there, but he had to walk through a sea of Everton fans, a sea of blue. I'm not entirely sure what the reception was that he got. I don't think it was probably too kind, but yeah, Richard Masters was there.
There was a video of it. Yeah, it wasn't too kind. He he ran the gauntlet, as it were. I think Upper Gladys Blue, who's a prolific poster on social media, he said that the brass neck of all time award goes to Richard Masters for that appearance. Given that obviously the Premier League dished out those points deductions for Everton, you know, an unprecedented brace of points deductions last season. How many was it they wanted? Did they want 17 in total, was it? I'm trying to think. And then Masters, of course, had his infamous small clubs remark about both Everton and Forest, which he had to backtrack on and try and explain his way out of that one. So, yeah, for Richard Masters to show his face, maybe he's trying to build a few bridges there. I don't know. But, yeah, it was a curious one. And it was really about who wasn't there. I mean, there was all the rumours, wasn't there, about Prince William, because he's president of the FA. I mean, he was with Masters at the FA Cup final the day before. He wasn't there because, of course, Goodison Park's first club to be visited by a reigning monarch. It's another first for it. Coming out from all today. But Richard Masters, yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting that he was there and Dan Freaking wasn't. It's a curious one for me with that one. I mean, you don't want a meddling owner. I mean, Farhad Mashiri got involved in football matters far too many times, and Mr. Freakin seems to be delegating those tasks to whether it's Mark Watts, and obviously he's brought in the new CEO, Angus Kinnear, as well. He's leaving the football decisions to others. But I just thought it was a shame, really, that the Freakin group have come in before Christmas and they're part of this bright new future, hopefully, that they haven't chosen to experience Goodison Park themselves. Maybe they're thinking, just a clean slate and we'll be there at the new stadium for a new Everton. But I just think if you're trying to understand the Everton psyche we've talked about, I mean, you can see it from the pictures, but it would have been nice for them to actually to experience a game at Goodison. I think it's their loss, and it's been all great stuff about the Freaking group and obviously the positive changes that they hope to be making in. I thought it would have been nice. Certainly, you know, he's had ample opportunity. He's been there since, I say, December to experience at least one game at Goodison. So for have passed without him being there, I just thought that was a shame, really.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because we did discuss it, didn't we, before before the weekend. I was a little bit disappointed, I'm like you, but I don't want to just go in on the new owner because they made a decision not to come to Goodison. So I'm not entirely sure where to stand, but again, I don't want to be too critical. I mean, there was a big, obviously, game with Roma. He wasn't.
His son was there, wasn't it, Roma?
At Roma. It was Claudio Ranieri's last ever game. I know they did a big thing, but yeah, I can't disagree. I'm slightly disappointed, but I don't want to be too harsh on it. Where do you stand on that? It's an interesting point that Chris has brought up.
I think it is interesting, but I mean, I think it's a bit irrelevant.
Don't want to make too much of a big deal about it.
It's not a criticism, and like I say, it's just a shame. I think it's a shame for him that he has chosen not to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's more on him, isn't it? You know,
he can go on the Liverpool Echo website and see all the videos and pictures, can't he?
watch my Facebook Lives back.
Exactly.
Everyone's gonna feel for it. But no, I
page.
think look, they've made the decision. I think we don't know why they didn't come. There might be a background reason why. Yeah, it's disappointing, but I don't think it's the end of the world, is it? And I think there was a lot of people there on Sunday who I'm quite happy with there though. You know, Graham Sharp's one who does spring to mind because I know there's been, obviously a lot gone on in recent years around, his time on the board and stuff like that. But, it should never be forgotten that he is a Goodison Park legend, scored some of the biggest goals that Goodison's ever seen. And, he deserves to be on the pitch with, a lot of them ex-players. And great to see Big Nev as well. Obviously
he looked okay. I think
he's obviously had a few, medical issues, hasn't he, in recent weeks. And it's good to see him walking around the pitch because I think it's safe to say he is the greatest player to play Goodison Park who's still alive. Obviously, people will count it and say Dixie Dean, but I think the greatest living player
we had a debate.
Goodison's ever had is Neville Southall, isn't it?
We had a debate at literal debate on this after the game, and we couldn't really decide, although Neville probably came out on top. But the three that we said who were still living was Neville, obviously, Joe Royle, and Colin Harvey as well. So those they were the top three. But
I wouldn't disagree with that. But I think Neville just pips do the two, because I think Southall at one point, and Chris will be able to back me up on this, was regarded as the best in the world. And
at
I think, at his peak, and I think that's some title to have, isn't it? If you're the best in the world in your position. Yeah. And no one ever I think the big thing about Southall is not just an Everton fan, fans of all of the clubs, no one ever disputes how good he was in his peak, do they? So I think that's the biggest compliment that you can pay him.
Carl Barron has got a theory as to why the Freakins didn't attend, or Dan Freakin didn't attend. He said they didn't attend because it was purely for the fans.
They're giving up the seat for somebody else. Selfless.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Actually, we know how difficult it was to get your seat on Sunday. Incidentally, new addition to the Royal Blue Podcast studio. The scarf. I heard that the press box didn't.
No, we didn't
get a scarf.
We didn't get scarves.
What's that about?
No. I mean, season ticket holders. People have been going X amount of years.
Sure, there was a few spares knocking around.
Joe Thomas was fuming over that. To be fair, I had said to him, Joe, we're there strictly as neutrals here in our capacity. Wow. And I think one might made its way to him at some point. Yeah, so maybe he was all right.
Okay, I'll just read out a couple of questions. So interesting when I'll come to you on this, Connor. Liam says, as emotional as it was, one thing that stuck out to me was this club is like a pressure cooker and it's ready to explode. Oof. And the other thing was we have the best fans in the world. Just, I guess, an observation from Liam there.
I mean, the explode is you hope for better times.
I take that to a positive thing.
Yeah, it's a positive thing, yeah. Hopefully that is the case, isn't it? I mean, look, we all know, don't we, that it's been written enough times that, Everton are a bit of a sleeping giant, and hopefully now we're on the road to bigger and better things. And, I think it shouldn't be forgotten. I mean, I'm going to, miss Goodison dearly, going there every other week. And it's been a big part of my life, not just my childhood. And it's the place where, we'll all have, and I've got, thousands of memories, if we're being honest, from the 25 years I've been going there. But I think in all this, and I know Chris touched on it earlier as well, we shouldn't forget how good Bramley-Moore is, should we? And what we're moving into. This isn't West Ham leaving Upton Park to go to London Stadium. This is Everton leaving Goodison Park to go to a purposely built football stadium, on the edge of Liverpool city centre on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. It's pretty special. And it'll take time to get used to. It'll take time for everyone to get adjusted to life at Bramley-Moore. It'll take maybe a couple of seasons for people to get into the swing of things. But, we are going to a very special venue. We're, like I say, this isn't, West Ham up, leaving their roots at Upton Park to go to the London Stadium, which was not a purpose-built football ground, and was just not ready to host West Ham and what West Ham was all about. This is Everton going to a purpose-built football ground that's truly stunning. It's breathtaking. You walk in. I was quite fortunate to go to the second event, and where we were sat in I think it was the East Stand. We got a great view of the South Stand, and and I wrote afterwards, Howard Kendall once said about the Glasgow Street stuck in one in. You can fully see, in a couple of years, the South Stand kicking stuck in one in because it's that steep and it's that intimidating, and we shouldn't forget what we're moving into. And it's sad, and we're leaving behind a lot of memories, but you've got to move with the times. You've got to evolve, and everything have got to evolve if they're going to, as the comment says there, explode. And this is the biggest step we can take to do that.
I think obviously winning football matches will help with the adaptation.
100%. I mean, that is the the big thing is Everton have got to hit the ground running, because it's notorious, isn't it? All these clubs move grounds, and I think it was at Arsenal, was it 6 games I think it took them to win their first one, or they won 1 in 6 or something like that at their first at the Emirates. And West Ham have obviously, ironically, really, West Ham had a lot of struggles around the London Stadium until David Moyes got there, and all of a sudden they found a way to win, and they ended up creating probably not the same levels of atmosphere as Upton Park, but they created some great nights that eventually saw them get all the way to the Conference League final and go on and lift the European trophy. So ironically, really, David Moyes in a good position because he knows what it's like to go to a new ground and have to hit the ground running and get, I know they'd moved in a little bit before he got there, but I'm sure he'd be aware of how difficult it can be to replicate what you had before.
There's a lot of explosion references in the comments today. I got another one here,
because of all the blue flares potentially still got on the mind.
So Chris, there's one here from James Dean. James agrees with Connor about Moyes' interview. He says, I thought Moyes' interview at the end was excellent. He captured the moment and that we are ready to explode. Just imagine if we were good. Yeah. I mean, we've said that, haven't we?
Yeah, to be fair to David Moyes, it's nothing. You can put a strong case forward now that he's the only manager to have managed Everton successfully over a sustained period. In the modern era, wheels fell off after 1 year for Roberto Martinez. And ironically, at the moment he was defecting back to Real Madrid, even the great Carlo Ancelotti, who's obviously shown he's not a busted flush by what he's done back at Real Madrid subsequently. If he'd have been anyone other than himself, his CV for that season would have been coming under serious scrutiny the way they finished that season. So it couldn't... You could argue he's the perfect pair of hands to be at the helm at this pivotal moment in the club's history, given all that he achieved in the first spell. And he's come back. He is different, Moyes 2.0. The players who knew him first time round said how he's mellowed, but he's garnered all that experience that he's had, the ups and downs, because let's not forget, obviously, he lost the United job after less than a season. He went down with Sunderland. So he's experienced the highs and lows over a long period since he was Everton first time round. And he's come back a more rounded individual and probably a better all-round manager who's more comfortable in his skin. And we were probably very fortunate, actually. He said if he didn't have that Everton connection, he probably wouldn't have touched that job of a barge pole in January. He said himself he wouldn't go in and do a relegation fight.
Well, one suspects he was surely offered other jobs, wasn't he, around the clubs who were in a similar position to Everton at the time. He's probably gone, no, you're all right, thanks. At my age, I don't, and maybe I think he's touched himself, hasn't he? I think he probably felt a bit of a duty to be the person to come back and get them going again, because he probably thought, But I think Chris is right. I think Moyes is a different person. The moment that summed up for me was when he played United, and obviously you could see he was clearly very angry with the penalty decision that went against Everton that afternoon, and he was certainly frustrated in his press conference, and he made his point, and he made it an articulate in a very good way. And then someone said to him, have you been into the referee, and if you're going to basically kick off, and he was like, he just laughed and went, no, I'm too old for that. He went to younger me, he might have done nicer, but I'm too old for that. Yeah. It's just like, well, it's done, it's not going to change. I've maybe I'm disappointed, but I'm too old for kicking off, and he's done. He has. I mean, I know there's been some indifferent results in recent weeks, but I think he has done some job to get so many of these, to get the squad that was suffering so much, prior to his arrival to the position that they're in now. and the injuries he's had to contend with as well. There's obviously a lot of talk about injuries, but you think, he lost Mangala early on. He's lost Lindstrom,
Ndai was injured for a couple of months.
Ndai was out for a while, wasn't he? Calvert-Lewin obviously got injured at Brighton as well. He's not, you think the United games that he had 12 fit senior outfield players essentially at his disposal. He has done well, and look, he knows himself that there's more work to be done, but one thing I think we can all agree on is that you would trust him to get the job done and to make the tough decisions this summer.
One thing that we haven't discussed with regards to the new stadium is that the stadium naming rights have been chosen.
Yeah.
Obviously, announcements on Friday, wasn't it?
6 o'clock Friday.
Hill Dickinson Stadium. What were your thoughts when that dropped?
Well, first of all, it was very surprising, wasn't it? When it dropped at that particular moment, just before Goodison Park's final game. And I think a few people have been discussing about this. Maybe they were thinking more of a global brand who would have had that higher profile. But it's a long-established Liverpool firm, isn't it? And the club are telling us that they're putting the money in terms of it's one of the biggest deals in Europe of its kind. I mean, that's not a very detailed statement as such, but if that's the case, I mean, it's nice that it's gone to a Liverpool firm in that respect, and we're all going to have to get used to, Hill Dickinson Stadium now, because that's what it's called now.
Are you going to refer to it as the Hill Dickinson Stadium?
I'm going to try, yeah. I think I'm always one for, calling things what the title is.
You never know. You might get some discounts if you ever need some legal representation.
Well, hopefully I don't. Hopefully I don't. I know I'm from Walton here, but I mean, there's no need to,
You never know after that 3-day bender when we win the FA Cup.
That is true, yeah. I mean, hopefully I'd like to just think I'd be in a pub somewhere singing karaoke for the 3 days, to be honest.
You probably won't be able to leave. You won't leave. They'll be kicking you out. That's what it'll be.
No one will be kicking me.
Drunken disorderly behaviour.
No. But no, I think it's like Chris says, it's good, isn't it? It's a Liverpool form. It's probably not the type of company we all expect it to be. I think there was a lot of expectation that it was going to be like a, Qatar Airways or a big major bank, or, so it's the history of it is quite nice, and, the club believe they've got a really good deal, which is the most important thing, isn't it? Because, we know how crucial these commercial deals are in the land of PSR now, and, unfortunately we all have to monitor PSR. Yeah. And,
well, we've seen today Leicester City again.
We're
in trouble.
If we're being honest, I think Everton has become a PSR Premier League expert in the last few years because of the position that our clubs found themselves in terms of transfers and whatnot. So, if the club got a really good financial deal that is going to benefit them moving forward, then that's the most important thing in all this, isn't it? And look, people are always going to call it what they want to call it, aren't they? Everyone, people call Goodison the old lady, so people can call whatever they want, but I will try and call it the Hill Dickinson Stadium.
I have seen this joke previously, but Terry Dactyl says the standing joke is we are offering a no-win, no-fee for the fans.
Wow.
I wonder if,
typical Terry, that, isn't it, really?
Yeah, typical Terry. Where are we up to? Right. I've got a question here. We'll finish off with another question from Carl Byron. Moving on from Goodison, we'll get your final thoughts on it in a sec. But Carl says, only 12 days till our most important transfer window opens. Expecting some contract announcements this week. Also, let's get this right this time. Contract announcements. Could you read anything into the players saying bye? And Abdoulaye Doucouré was in tears. Moyes incidentally was asked about it after the game, and kind of battered it away. So I think that the interviewer kind of said, Abdoulaye Doucouré was in tears. Does that mean that he's leaving? And Moyes kind of just said, doesn't really mean anything. He's just saying bye and stuff like that.
We asked Trent McNeil about that afterwards, and he was a bit non-committal as well. Them quotes are going to come out on the Echo website this afternoon or tomorrow and be in the paper.
I guess one is Ashley Young's confirmed that he's not.
Well, 3 have gone, haven't they?
Yeah.
Because Chris wrote on Saturday, 3 are being confirmed, haven't they?
Which is interesting, actually, that both understudy goalkeepers are going, because as I understand that there was an option to retain Virginia, and Joe and I were saying it kind of makes sense, when you're having to spend so much in other areas with so many other players. Don't spend any money on your number 2 goalkeeper. So that's an interesting one, that Virginia's been let go alongside Asmir Begovic. Ashley Young, of course, he's saying Seamus Coleman's staying on, but Ashley Young, he was a regular under Sean Dyche's first signing, actually, and someone who'd actually played alongside Dyche at Watford as a teenager. So he goes just shy of his 40th birthday, Everton's oldest ever outfield player, Everton's oldest ever goal scorer. He hadn't always filled in, and he's always done the job when he's come in. His minutes have been curtailed under Moyes, obviously the left field move of bringing in Jake O'Brien as the right back. So he's moving on. So it'll be interesting, if, like you say, in the other players, what do we take from Adlai Decore's tears? I mean, he gave a very high profile interview with a fan channel last week, and he said he was expecting a contract to be on its way from the club, but the crux of the matter is it going to be a contract that he accepts? We know that the club haven't taken up their option to retain Decore on the extra year, so he's not going to be getting the same wages as what he was going to get. So is he happy with the money? Is he happy with these any reassurances or lack of in terms of his playing time for next season? So if Decore's right and a contract is going to be on the table, it's going to be his decision to turn that down if for whatever reason he thinks he can get better elsewhere or more guarantees in the playing time. And then you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Michael Keane as well. I mean, two players who would expect to be heading through the exit door, but then recently Dominic Calvert-Lewin has sort of given his clearest hint that he might be willing to extend his stay. Perhaps the offers elsewhere haven't been what he was expecting. Michael Keane, I don't know. I'd expect Michael Keane to go unless he was happy being retained as like fourth choice centre back, sort of the role he's had for the last 3 years, really. Because if you think back, he was like basically one of Everton's first choice central defenders for his first 5 years at the club, and then he's had a bit part role for the last 3. So is he willing to stay just playing here and now, sort of when required? So. Yeah, lots of questions to be answered, and maybe we'll get some more announcements in the coming days.
Yeah, I mean, just sticking with Decore, just quickly, Connor. It's interesting, isn't it? Because for a player who plays so much, it's unusual that the club would just let a player leave on a free. You know, for someone who has so many minutes and has been quite integral to the team. I know people will criticise him for his technical ability and maybe certain other things as well. I get that, but obviously, I just think for someone who plays a lot, or has done in the past, and now it's just on a free. That's quite unprecedented for me, for anyone to do. Take Decore's name out of it.
I get what you're saying, but I think it's crystal clear there, isn't it? It's probably the finer details, isn't it, of the deal. And
do you think Everton will need to compromise then if they want to keep him?
Possibly. I mean, we don't know what David Moyes is thinking either, because he could be thinking next year he might play a different way. You know, he might want to play somewhere else in the 10 and maybe have more runners. You know, maybe have a bit more creativity in terms of that position. We don't know what David Moyes is thinking. I think the other thing as well, you know, with some of these announcements and stuff, is it's on the individual as well, isn't it? Who, you know, whose contract's up. You know, Ashley Young, for instance, might look at it and think, well, actually, I'll go drop down to even the Championship. Probably not League One, but drop down, and I'm probably going to play every week. You know, and I want to go and do it. Want to have a season where I'm going to go play every week. Knowing full well, like we're thinking at Everton, I think the expectation is Everton are probably going to look to bring the right back in this summer. Jake O'Brien's already shown that he's more than capable of going to play it right back if required. So he's probably looking at it thinking, well, actually, you know, I don't really want to just sit on the bench for my final kind of maybe year as a career. I'd rather drop down, go and play every week. Virginia could be the same. You know, he could be looking around thinking, well, actually, at my age now, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be a number 1 goalkeeper. I don't want to be number 2 anymore. I want to play every week. You know, just them conversations could be getting had, you know, around game times. Michael Keane is another one, isn't he? Like Chris says there, does he want to be number 4th choice centre back, or actually does he look at it and think, I'm going to go and play elsewhere, because you suspect Michael Keane would probably be able to go and play somewhere else on a weekly basis. So they are also factors that we've got to take into consideration. It's not just a case of Everton wanting to keep that player or not keep that player. Some of them players could look at it and go, well, from my own personal perspective, I'm going to leave because I want to go and play. Or, you know, Decore is the interesting one now. I think, you know, hopefully Everton retain the services of Idrissa Gana Gueye, because I think we can all agree he's been instrumental in, you know, probably being one of Everton's players of the season, this season. But yeah, Decore is an interesting one, but it did feel a little bit on Sunday like it was a farewell, didn't it, to tears. I mean, me and Chris saw afterwards as well, you know, he come out on the pitch before he was leaving, he was taking pictures and stuff like that. He could have just been doing it because it was the farewell to Goodison game, but they did feel that little bit of almost a farewell, and, you know, I think it's probably one of them ones, but it'll be a case of wait and see. Okay. But we should start to hear murmurs, because you suspect, you know, decisions and conversations will probably be getting had this week.
Yeah, David Moyes said, didn't he? He said there'd be some before the game, maybe some the week after, didn't he? The manager actually said that, so you'd expect maybe in the coming days something else might come out.
Well, it was funny, wasn't it, on his press conference on Friday when he sat down, he had this piece of paper.
His list.
Well, we thought, we don't know what was on there. Yeah. We assume it was a list. We thought he was going to read out players who were leave, and then were staying, and he didn't. He brought up a couple, but he didn't definitively go, yes, you're staying or he's staying. So we were a little bit like, why has he got that piece of paper?
Yeah, it was weird. It was like incredible, really, the shades of Ronald Koeman, because he brought his reading glasses. You remember when Koeman had the statement, which we were told wasn't a statement. I think it was the dispute with the Irish FA at the time, or over the international players. And he said, the only time Koeman brought his reading glasses out and he had the sheet. Moyes the same. Moyes never seen him with his reading glasses, but he had them there and he had the piece of paper. But yeah, I wasn't there. Joe was down there at Finch Farm. I think it was a case of, I don't know what was on that piece of paper, but they were expecting perhaps the manager to say more, but he was a bit more tight-lipped, and it was kind of certainly in shame for Seamus Coleman. He sort of hinted at it, and then afterwards he sort of confirmed, we are going to keep him on, and the understanding is that it's a playing contract. So what was on that sheet of paper? Don't know.
I think I joked afterwards that he had second thoughts of when he sat down and he saw the names. He thought, oh no, he needs to go, or no, he needs to stay, and he didn't want to confirm it at the time.
I think he's been quite clear, always hasn't he, that not everyone is going to leave. They want to keep some of the players.
Well, I think you have to. With 14 out of contract, it'd be like everyone, wild, wouldn't it?
Not everyone is going to leave, and you suspect that with the loan players will probably all return to the parent clubs, because
the issue that you got though is you're spot on, but seemingly we were offering players contracts. Ashley Young seemingly offered the contract, but he's turned it down.
That's what I'm saying, in terms of personal preference, isn't it?
Yeah. We're in a bit of trouble then, aren't we?
It's one thing the club saying we want to, we're offering you a contract, but that person, like I say, Ashley Young could, weigh it up and go, I've got one last season left in me. With the greatest respect, I don't want to sit on the bench every week. You might be, Ashley Young seems the type of humble guy that he is, and probably a reason why he's still playing this level that, the level that he is. You might look at it and go, I'd even drop down to the Championship just to play every week, and then bow to the end of the season and go, I played till I was 41, and I played every week and it was great. Rather than, you sit on the bench and you're hoping that you might get an opportunity in the League Cup, and I think probably someone at his age probably just thinking, I don't really want that.
I think Chris is spot on with the goalkeeping situation. Both secondary goalkeepers are leaving, and it's now an issue has been created where there wasn't one, where you thought that's fine.
But again, that could be because Virginia decides that he wants to go and play elsewhere, though.
But if the club have got the option, though, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it was our understanding that there was an option to retain Virginia for next year. So is that the club's decision?
Well, they're going to have to spend money now, aren't they, on bringing?
Unless they get another free, but yeah.
I mean, this
we've got a big summer ahead of us. That's all I'm going to say. We've got a big summer, and the beauty of it all is it'll give us plenty to talk about over the summer. There'll be no off season for us. Let's put it this way.
Absolutely not. Final thoughts then, Chris. Obviously, I think the whole podcast really dedicated to Goodison's final game.
It was a magnificent occasion. Like I said, thanks to David Moyes for creating that, because he ended the pressure was off. It would have been an absolute travesty, wouldn't it, if Everton have had to go into that final game at Goodison needing something, and which was a realistic possibility if you look where they were at the halfway point of the season and where they've been in recent years. It's all becoming real now, and to be fair to the fans, they really made it that special occasion, and it really was Spirit of the Blues.
Yeah, it was special, Connor. I think it was emotional and everything else that came along with it. But I think even the thought and sentiment afterwards amongst people that I spoke to, and even myself, was that it's still the right time to go.
Yeah. I mean, it was a truly special day that lived long in the memory for everyone who was there. But yeah, like I said earlier, the time is right to move, and we shouldn't forget what we're moving into. This isn't a backward step. It's not a sideward step. It's one huge big step forward, and hopefully, it'll put the football club in a position in which they can improve and kick on now, and we won't look back, and it's a bright new blue future.
Okay, good place to finish. That is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. I've been Ian Croll with Chris Beesley and Connor O'Neill, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.